Mr. Montgomery, you have the floor. I will put you full screen.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, I actually have irrefutable evidence. I'd like to go ahead and share that right now with you guys if I could. It'll be very quick, actually. Okay, if you guys can all, this is irrefutable evidence I'd like to share with you guys. Just, here we go. Your Honor, I think that displays exactly what is completely wrong with what happened with Star Wars Disney. The fact that Luke Skywalker throws away his lightsaber should immediately, put Disney under... in fact, we should just go directly to the execution phase of the trial. Can we just, have them summarily executed, please?
We have more charges to discuss. While I understand the evidence you presented, which is a scene from the opening of The Last Jedi in which Jedi Master Skywalker throws his lightsaber over his shoulder. We're looking for a much more compelling argument here, sir. I'm sure we'd like to hear more of your argument.
Okay, so here's what I would say. And listen, I've got other witnesses. We're going to have today with us, we're going to have Luke Skywalker himself will be providing evidence, as well as the wife of George Lucas. But before we get to that, I just want to simply say that on October 30th, 2012, when Disney bought Star Wars for approximately $4.5 billion, Bob Iger was extraordinarily excited about this opportunity. Less than 4 months later, a plan was laid out. The problem is that Bob wanted his money back, and he wanted it back quickly. And he didn't take into consideration the fact that Disney, throughout time, has always taken approximately 3 years to produce each of its films. So if you go back to the original, Episode 4 was put out in 77, Empire 80, and Jedi in 83. And even the prequel series was done in 3-year increments. But Bob Iger wanted something else. He wanted Disney done quickly. And when he did that, he decided they were going to be put out every 2 years as opposed to every 3 so that they could get their money back even faster. And here's what Bob thought. He said, doesn't matter. The fans are going to show up no matter what we do. And when Kathleen Kennedy was brought on by George Lucas to head the franchise and to be the Kevin Feige, so to speak, of Star Wars, she did not have the experience nor the expertise to be able to do so, nor was she a fan of Star Wars in such a way that would allow her to put Star Wars first and the fans first. I would like to show you that as evidence here from Mark Hamill himself.
Please present your evidence.
Takes too long to share these screens. Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Take a look at what Mark Hamill himself had to say here with Rian Johnson, who is the defamed director of Episode 8.
Now, if I'm Mr. Montgomery, there's a icon in the lower right of that video image, which you could go full screen. That may help. There. Yeah. Let's do that from now on. If we'll be this goes to everyone, please, that we'll be sharing evidence in this trial.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, because I have no clue as to what the hell I'm doing. So thank you very much. Here we go.
Can I just say, though, a lot of times I would say to Ryan, we got to think about the fans. And he said, no, we got to think about the story, and we got to think about our movie. Which
It's right there, Your Honor. You got to think about the fans. But Rian Johnson said, no, we have to make our movie. So that of course, is one of the biggest problems of Star Wars. But why did this happen? What happened? So when J.J. Abrams was in the process of destroying Episode 7, Rian Johnson was writing Episode 8. Did the two talk to each other? Perhaps. But it didn't really matter because Kathleen Kennedy told Rian Johnson that it was his movie and he needed to do with it what he wanted to do with it. As you see here, Mark Hamill describe and repeat. Rian Johnson was making his own movie. So if you go back to the fact that Bob Iger wanted it put out every 2 years, okay, now agreed, J.J. Abrams didn't do a very good job. Could 7, 8, and 9 have been good if he had had control of all 3 movies? Well, for the sake of what we're talking about here today and the fact of the story having, the story being written properly, having the same director for all 3 movies obviously would have played into at least the story having more, and the story being more conclusive, connecting more, and making the fans a little happier. Not saying JJ would have done a better job, but because he only had 2 years, he did not take on episode 8 because he simply couldn't do it. He's in the process of making 7. So Rian Johnson gets 8. So, but the problem here is, Your Honor, that nobody really understands Star Wars as they probably should. So what I'd like to do is provide more evidence. The person who is probably more responsible for the success of Star Wars than perhaps George Lucas himself, and that would be his ex-wife, Marsha Lucas. And I'd like you to hear her words on what she felt like Kathleen Kennedy and J.J. Abrams had done for Star Wars. And this sharing process takes too damn long. Okay.
You're doing fine, Mr. Montgomery. Please just present your evidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor. Here we go.
The person we should listen to is the person who is probably the most responsible for Star Wars success next to George Lucas, and that's his first wife, Marsha. The woman who is responsible for the good luck kiss, Obi-Wan Kenobi dying, and the trench run leading up to the destruction of the Death Star, among other things. Well, she had this to say about Star Wars following the release of Episode 8. I like Kathleen. I always liked her. She was full of beans. She was really smart and really bright. Now that she is running LUCASFILM and making movies, it seems to me that Kathy and J.J. Abrams don't have a clue about making Star Wars. They don't get it. And J.J. Abrams is writing these stories. When I saw where they kill Han Solo, I was furious. Absolutely, positively, there was no rhyme or reason to it. I thought, you don't get the Jedi story. You don't get the magic of Star Wars. They killed Luke Skywalker and they don't have Princess Leia anymore. And they're spitting out movies every year. And they think it's important to appeal to a woman's audience. So now their main character is this female who's supposed to have Jedi powers, but we don't know how she got Jedi powers or who she is. It sucks. The storylines are terrible, awful. You can quote me. J.J. Abrams, Kathleen Kennedy, talk to me. Marsha didn't...
Your Honor, I think Marsha says it all there when she says, it sucks. And with that, I would like to rest my evidence.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Montgomery. Do you have any idea what, and I'm asking because I genuinely don't know, what does the phrase, she was full of beans, mean? She said that Kathleen Kennedy was full of beans. Beans, as we know, if you consume beans, one might expel gas. Was she saying she's full of gas? She's full of... I don't want to make an assumption. I'm just curious if I am not familiar with the term full of beans, and I'm just curious if you have a interpretation of what she meant by that remark.
Yes, it is well known, actually, Your Honor, that Kathleen Kennedy is very gassy. And it is true, Your Honor, and yeah, I'll back that up.
Your Honor, I'll just add that according to the dictionary, full of beans refers to being not correct or truthful. Full of nonsense.
Oh, that too. Yes, excellent.
Interesting. Mr. Connors, are you prepared to continue the prosecution's case?
I am, and I would like to thank Mr. Montgomery for his wonderful argument there, because I believe he's made some very good points, especially along the lines of The Last Jedi, because it may be true that is where the actual murder occurred. It was a slow abuse to that moment, but the actual murder did occur under the reign of Rian Johnson and Kathleen Kennedy. But I would like to take you back a little further, because my colleague today and many colleagues before me have pointed out that this was kind of built on faulty ground to begin with. You had a situation where, and I would like to present my first piece of evidence here, which is a piece from Esquire, where J.J. Abrams, the director and I believe co-writer of The Force Awakens and producer, had this to say about the situation in the Lucasfilm offices. He says they didn't have a real plan when they made the new Star Wars trilogy. So this, I believe, is one of the most damning pieces of evidence you could have here, is that there was no plan. I mean, he admits it. The core leader of this initial plan admits it there. Now, of course, we've had Daisy Ridley and others, including Simon Pegg, claim that there was other plans. But regardless of those plans, as my colleague had pointed out so rightfully so, were put to rest, just like the soul of Star Wars with Mr. Rian Johnson. And I know some other arguments have been made before about, oh, this was already dead, when it was clearly not dead, or Disney wouldn't have paid the money they have paid for it. If it was the case, that I believe so. And really, we have another problem here, and the legacy beyond the movies, right? What was the idea here that we had? And that was that you would want this seed to grow into a forest of Star Wars films. Well, what we've had here is a problem. And this problem is this revolving door. And you'll hear me bring up this revolving door quite a bit, because I myself have coined a term, or a saying, I should say, where I've said Kathleen Kennedy has fired more people than she's hired. And I know that may sound funny because it is meant to be a bit in jest, but at this point it's not inaccurate. And I give you also now the second piece of evidence I have here, and this is a long list.
Could you share screen, Mr. Connors, so that we can all share in your evidence?
Yeah. I am.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Connors.
Did I not share the last time too?
You didn't share the last one. We weren't able.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought I did.
We can go back and we can look at that.
Well,
I'll allow it. I'll allow
all right,
it.
I'll reshare those real quick just so you all
fine.
in the audience
That's
can
fine.
see here. We have this would be the piece with Simon Pegg here.
Yeah, please share your last piece of evidence for our jury to examine.
I thought I had. That's my fault.
That's fine.
And then prior to that, we had. Whoops, that's the wrong way. Let me see here. Where did I put it now? Of course, now I lost the one. But yes, that was the Esquire piece, and then the Daisy Ridley piece as well. And then we have now my next piece of evidence, which will feed into more, is this laundry list. And I want to bring this up here, because what we have here refers to what I mean when I said Kathleen Kennedy has fired more people than she's hired. And this is not even a complete list, folks, as you'll see when we get going here. We have the 2 completed projects, The Force Awakens and Last Jedi. These were completed by their original directors and creators. But other than that, none of the other projects under Lucasfilm and Disney have had any success. And I grant you this. I give you this evidence right here. We have Gareth Edwards, who was working on Rogue One. He was removed. Josh Trank was supposed to work on an earlier Boba Fett project. He was also removed. Lord and Miller were removed, and this is, and I insert this into evidence via the brother of the director, Ron Howard himself, that Lord and Miller had shot for 88 days on the project before they were removed. Now, for the court, for those in the jury who may not know, an average film, that is pretty much the time you need to shoot one. So that means they pretty much had almost shot this entire film when they brought in another director to completely reshoot the film. We also have Colin Trevorrow, who wrote Duel of the Fates and was meant to direct it. He also was let go when J.J. Abrams was brought back in to clean up the mess that Rian Johnson had created with The Last Jedi. Then we have Stephen Daldry, who was supposed to be working on an Obi-Wan project. He did not make that project. James Mangold, who is recently worked on Indiana Jones, was also attached to a Boba Fett project at one time. Benioff and Weiss of Game of Thrones fame also had a project that was canceled. Patty Jenkins of Wonder Woman fame also had a very high-profile project get canceled. J.D. Dillard has also had a film project canceled. Kevin Feige and Michael Waldron have now had a project canceled. Damon Lindelof and Josh Britt Gibson have been let go from the Rey project. And we also have since learned about David Gordon Green, who also had proposed a project that did not go forward at Disney as well. So Lord knows how many more victims there are behind the scenes of this huge injustice by Disney, where an entire generation of directors and creators have not been able to put their voice into one of the biggest pop culture franchises of all time. This is an injustice beyond any injustice before when it comes to this franchise, regardless of what damage George Lucas may or may not have inflicted prior to this. I don't think the denial can be made that this has gone nothing but in the wrong direction. And we brought up time and time again, the prosecution has brought up, and the defense for that matter, about this idea of the feminization of Star Wars, which is really hard to deny. It's become a problem. In fact, we even have high-profile papers like my next exhibit here. You have Business Insider bringing light to the fact that Bob Iger has a Star Wars problem at Disney. And this was already back in November of 2022. This has been an ongoing thing in all of the major trades when it comes to Star Wars. They have a problem. And that problem is a franchise that they killed. And that is where I rest my case, Your Honor.
Mr. Willie.
Yes, I'd like to ask Mr. Montgomery, where's the proof that Kathleen Kennedy told Rian Johnson to make his own movie?
The proof is actually in several interviews. You even heard it from Rian Johnson there himself. So he said there that, he was encouraged to, we need to make the movie for ourselves. And in several interviews, Kathleen Kennedy has talked about how she gives all of her directors the power to do what they want to do. I'll have to go back and I can produce this as evidence later. The evidence that was used actually to make that video, which was made about a year ago, where she did provide evidence that she had encouraged Rian Johnson to make the movie his own and she's not wrong. I mean, when you think about it, all of the movies that she produced before, Kathleen Kennedy, prior to working on Disney, was a fantastic producer. She's attached to many great movies. What is it about those movies that were great? Well, they were independent franchises, independent movies. And she wasn't responsible for the creative guidance of those movies. And she is the Kevin Feige of Disney, and so she failed. And so that I can provide that evidence though for you, Your Honor, if you'd like that.
I also provide my other piece of evidence I did bring up earlier. I'll just present it here now. And that is that the whatever plan was in place with J.J. Abrams was thrown out the window, according to Daisy Ridley and Simon Pegg. If you want to share this Den of Geek article that I mentioned earlier that I didn't get a chance to show. And that clearly says there was an origin plan, and it got tossed out the window. Well, who tossed it out the window? Mr. Johnson. So I don't think if he wasn't given carte blanche, then that wouldn't be the case. At least that's my interpretation of it.
I concur.
Thank you, Mr.
In
Connors.
fact, I could back that up.
Mr. Ng?
Sorry,
Mr. Ng?
I can back that up with the interview. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. In the interview with Wired Magazine and J.J. Abrams, he states, and quote, Ryan has asked for a couple of things here and there that he needs for his story. He is an incredibly accomplished filmmaker and an incredibly strong writer. So the story he told, what we were doing, and went in the direction that he felt was best. But that was very much in line with what we were thinking as well. Now, here's the important part. But you're right. That will be his movie. He's going to do it in the way he sees fit. He's neither asking for nor does he need me to oversee the process. And that's a direct quote from J.J. Abrams.
Thank you, sir.
Father Dave, did you have any questions for cross-examine?
I just want to confirm with Mr. Connors that he does admit the fact that the Star Wars franchise was not in the best place prior to the purchase of the franchise by Disney.
I did admit that it was not in the same place it was before, but I also did enter into evidence that the fact that it was sold to Disney for $4.05 billion and the fact that it was still a flourishing franchise. The Force Awakens was the highest grossing movie of all time is my next piece to argue that point. If it was a dead franchise, then I don't think that would
I'm
have
not
happened at
asking
that
if it was
point.
dead. I was asking if it was damaged.
Again, if it was damaged, I don't think that Disney would have paid $4.05 billion for it, or The Force Awakens would have been the highest grossing film until Avengers Endgame knocked it off that pedestal. That's my answer to that.